Well, I guess this is my turn now. Just note, some of you who have heard me lecture before probably know that this is going to be a disaster, so we'll see how this goes. But thank you for sharing. It was good. Actually, I wanted to also say that, that fact that you talked about, St. Francis of Assisi. I actually also read in Christianity Today that they also do not think that he has ever said that phrase ever, based on his lifestyle or based on his preaching. So, simply put, it's basically the most famous quote that's never said, basically. Yeah. A little bit about myself, about my motivation of doing this. I used to go to church where evangelism is very dim. There really isn't any. It was basically go to church and then see you next Sunday, and there isn't really a really enthusiastic Irish type of thing. And for me, I don't know if it's because of my dad's influence or if it's just myself, but my dad he actually used to be the executive director for Hong Kong Campus Crusade for Christ back in Hong Kong. So I don't know if it's because of my dad's influence or anything like that, but for me, not only to go to a church like that, but also go to a public school and see so-called Christians who try to not share their faith, it's pretty alarming. I shared this statistic before by Dr. Bill Bright. Only 2% of American Christians regularly share their faith. That may be a very backdated statistic because that book was written in around 1998, but I do not think that that statistic has gone up that much. I also know that Promise Keepers also said that about 90% of Christian men have never shared the gospel even once. So it is alarming, and I do not think that this is just limited to what sometimes we call cultural Christians. Just to let you guys know, I'm a very visual type of person, so I tend to display a lot of stuff on here. So if you guys sleep at a certain time, I'm not offended in any way. But I stumbled upon this quote during the summer. It was by a president of a Christian college. This is what he said, and this is based off of the United Methodist Reporter. Christians who feel that they need to evangelize persons of other faiths have an incorrect perception of what it means to follow Jesus. I think the correct perception is much more on the side of learning to express love for God and love for your neighbor as yourself. Those are the fundamentals for me. I would agree and disagree at the same time, and I would disagree with the first statement. And I truly believe that this is also a misconception of what evangelism really is, as I will talk later on about what the motivation of evangelism is. But before we go through that, we should talk about the misconceptions of evangelism. I'm just going to skip through this. And note that some of the lists on here we're not saying that all of these are bad, but it's just that if you leave them by themselves, it does not count as evangelism. And I admit for myself that I've sometimes thought that just these alone would be considered evangelism. The first 5 is based on the book by Mark Dever called 9 Marks of a Healthy Church, which she talks about evangelism as one of the marks of a healthy church. The first thing is imposition of beliefs. I'm sure all of you have probably heard of the statement, "Don't you dare impose your beliefs on me." And for us Christians, we should not really view it as a imposition of beliefs for 2 reasons. One, we believe that the stuff that we believe are facts. So it's not based on personal opinion or a certain way. It's just based on facts. They could agree or disagree with it, but what we believe is that what we believe are facts. And the second thing is that the facts that we believe, what we claim about those facts is that they're not from us. So it's not even from our own personal invention. It's based off of what we believe as God's Word, which is the Bible. So it's not an imposition in any way, because it's not a personal opinion. Personal testimonies. Now, you can't have evangelism within a personal testimony. You might have like a evangelistic message within there, and then maybe I call people to come to Christ. But in and of itself, it's not evangelism, because evangelism is to share what the good news is. What personal testimony is basically sharing what God has done in your life. It may have an evangelistic message in there, it may not. But by itself, it's not evangelism. Social action or political involvement. I'm sure everyone here probably know that conversion is not just like an outward type of thing. It's not like, oh, we became Christians so we do good things and stuff like that. No, we change from inside out. So it's not just a social action about like being able to make the community a better place. No, it's a transformation of the person's life and with the relationship with Jesus Christ. Apologetics. Let me just say that apologetics, it's really important if you have apologetics in your mind, because there are some people who might have this one stumbling block. They really, really want to know the answer to this question. If not, they're not going to trust in God. Well, apologetics is a really useful tool in evangelism. But just because you can defend the historical affirmation of the cross, or the idea that Jesus is both God and man, doesn't really share that what God can do in your life. These are just facts, and it doesn't really it doesn't really talk about the heart of the issue, which is why we need Jesus. It can help, but it's not by itself evangelism. And finally, this is probably one of the biggest misconceptions: results. Evangelism is not based upon whether you can get a person to come to Christ. Like how many people you could come to Christ, no matter if it's 1 or 50 or 1,000. We know that the heavens would rejoice if there's one person who would come to Christ, no matter how much the number is. If there is even if there is one person, the heavens would rejoice. But just because you cannot get a person to make that step of faith, it doesn't mean that what you did was not evangelism, because you could plant a seed in a person's life, and who knows, maybe you're Paul who planted that seed, and maybe there will be an Apollo later on who will be watering that seed later on in his life, and he might make that step later on. But numbers is not an important issue in evangelism. We're only called to go and share the gospel. These last three are a little bit from what I had. Relationship evangelism. Don't worry, I'm not saying that you cannot make friends and then share the gospel. I'm talking about a specific definition of relationship evangelism where all you do is just make friends and that's it. Just show like, oh, what a Christian is like, or how great a Christian life is, which is totally fine, but that's not evangelism by itself, because that doesn't tell you that doesn't tell the person like how do you become a Christian, or how does like one